we've got a couple people. First one is Sarah. Come on up from Dentistry Support. And next person is Sujan from Mailshake. And then last but not least is we've got Andy from Ionic Partners. Okay, so I have been so incredibly excited to be able to do this panel for a few reasons. So a lot of you probably know that the intro talk that I did today, really kind of showing you where remote work, or why we came up with the Running Remote conference, was fundamentally, I was so incredibly frustrated with trying to figure out how to scale companies remotely. So this was 2018, and I was with Igor, who is the other co-organizer of Running Remote. And there was a whole bunch of information on how to hire a virtual assistant or how to be a digital nomad, but there was nothing out there about how to build $1 billion SaaS business, or sorry, remote business in any way. And it was so incredibly frustrating to me because I was like, well, how do we actually get there? And I knew a couple guys that had built $1 billion remote first companies. So I have a ready, fire, aim philosophy. I basically booked a venue in Ubud, Bali, and then I tried to align that reality. And I basically just went out and tried to convince a whole bunch of people, please come to this conference. And a lot of my friends did. And it was a great conference. And that was back in 2018. And here we are in 2025. And a whole bunch of stuff has happened in between those 2 points. So getting to scaling is really the coolest and funnest part of running a remote company. I feel there's a whole bunch of new challenges. You don't necessarily, one of my business mentors told me, things don't get easier, you just get better, you get stronger. And so we have people that are stronger and better, and I want to be able to just, everyone give a short little introduction of what they do inside of their companies, and then we will get into the questions. So, Sarah, how about you?
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for having me. My name is Sarah Beth Herman. I'm a 5-time CEO. I own 5 companies that are all remote companies, 600 employees in one of those, and then it kind of trickles down from there. I have a podcast. I do lots of things, but most importantly, I lead very generously with my heart first. And so I'm excited to share more about that scalability. I love taking businesses from 6 figures to 7, 7 figures to 8, and really showing them their true potential. So I'm excited to chat today.
Awesome. Sujan, how about you?
Hey, everyone. I run a company called Mailshake, which is a sales, outbound sales tool. I also have a handful of other portfolio companies across the board. We're about 100 or so employees and staff members around the world. And we were remote accidentally from the beginning. And we just kind of kept it that way as we figured out like the unlock from all these efficiencies and just how much we can get done and for less.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Andy Tryba, local Austin guy, so I'm super excited that this is actually here in Austin versus in Bali, even though I do want to go to the Bali one at some point. But yeah, I guess I call myself a former entrepreneur that kind of ran out of good ideas, and now I just buy companies instead. So we've purchased about 18 companies over the last 10 years or so, and then we convert them all to remote. So, we buy all enterprise software roughly in that $5 to $30 million in ARR range, and then immediately shut down the office, immediately take them remote. So that's a little bit about us.
Amazing. Let's start off with that, actually. So buying companies and converting them to remote. Maybe you can explain this in a paragraph. Maybe not. Maybe it takes like 2 or 3 hours to be able to do it. But how do you do that? What's your 20,000-foot process?
Yeah, so you guys are all remote experts here, so obviously no need to talk about the benefits of that, but it really actually starts from even before we buy the company, right? We analyze basically the business and say, can this business actually run remote, and are there tons of advantages to actually then making it remote? We then interview, through diligence, the leadership team, and really then understand whether or not they have the experience to be able to run remote teams and how they actually can run their processes asynchronous and what have you. Oftentimes the answer is no, so we end up replacing a lot of those with other leaders that do have that experience. But then we have a very specific process that we go in through there called our works process, where we analyze the workflows, how do we go make that remote, we look at the organization and the recruiting, and how do we go stand up remote pipelines, how do we look at lead metrics, lag metrics, and what have you, and ensure that you can actually design that whole thing to be able to run in a remote way. because it is fundamentally different, as you guys well know, to run a remote firm, and you can't just take an in-person company and be like, okay, we're going to tweak a few things, and then suddenly the culture is remote. Like, you literally have to blow it apart, right? And you have to fundamentally change everything about it to then be able to bring in the right people to go make that happen.
Sujan or Sarah, with regards to remote culture, do you agree with that statement? Like, what are the big changes you see in remote organizations versus in-person organizations? And you're both operating companies at scale, so that might be a little bit different in comparison to people that are just starting out.
So one of the things that I had to learn is that the in-person experience of someone working in office is dramatically different, and I didn't know that to begin with. And it wasn't actually until I partnered with Time Doctor and really started analyzing the output of my team to realize that certain positions that I thought would be the same in a remote world needed to be totally rehashed, revamped, like you said, blow it up. I mean, because for example, we support dental practices in my largest organization. And in a dental office, just at a high level view, one position might do 17 different tasks. But what we actually learned through the Time Doctor tracking system and all of the things that my team does is that we could actually create 3 different people that did that one job, but they improved our efficiency by 85% by dividing that job into 3 different people who could work on 10 different locations simultaneously, but do it better, essentially. So that's one of the biggest things. And then as far as remote culture is concerned, you know, in office, we have this way that we've just always done things. And so we just do it like that. And then when you go to the remote, you said the word culture, and that's what really piqued my interest. There's actually something called cultural intelligence. And if you've never heard of that before and you have virtual team members in other countries, it's really important to understand what those other countries are like. Because, for example, I have team members in the Philippines, and you can't just tell someone, hey, do X, Y, and Z, and then have them go do X, Y, and Z. You have to ask them about their family first. You have to ask them about their weekend. You have to, like, know your people more than just, please go do these tasks. So there's a whole aspect to that, and I encourage you to go look it up. Take a few minutes to just understand cultural intelligence. So my 2 pieces on that.
Love it. One of the things I learned about myself being remote was I'm an asshole, or at least I sound like an asshole when I communicate, and you've never met me or had a conversation with me, which is actually most of my team. Very rarely do I talk to sales rep number 7 on, company number 4, right? And the list goes on with that. I might know their names and interests and all that stuff, and I hear about their details through their direct reports, but I'm blunt, and I'm like, oh, yeah, do this. And if you don't know the context of, like, or you don't know me, I'm going to sound like an asshole. And turns out a whole company's a bunch of assholes. It's not we're trying to be assholes. We just sound like them because there's no context. There's no whatever. And, an example is, like, our dev may have spent, like, 3 weeks building something, and I just shit all over it because I gave feedback, right? And I didn't say all the nice words that I would have maybe in a meeting saying, great job. That looks hard, and I appreciate what you've done, and blah, blah, blah. So we had to combat that. We had to train people, onboard people correctly to be able to understand how to communicate that way. We didn't stop being assholes. I got more assholes who like to get stuff done, but at the end of the day, we just figured out, like, oh, we're actually nice people, and there's stuff behind it, but, like, this is just how we communicate.
Wow. I like the asshole analogy. That was fantastic.
And proud.
I don't know if you have this the philosophy of, like, if an asshole falls in the forest, does it make a sound type of thing? Like, are you sound like an asshole or are you an asshole? I don't know.
We'll have to find
I don't
out.
think you're an asshole, by the way.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I think you're
in
fantastic.
Person,
Yes.
If you email me, I probably won't answer it. And Andy, I feel like an asshole to you because you emailed and you're super nice, but I just forgot. And I thought you were an asshole, actually. Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you. Proud.
So I want to get into this next question here, which is, and we were talking about this backstage for a little bit. I think when you're at 0 to 1, you're just figuring stuff out. When you're 1 to 10 million, that is, you're really trying to build your processes, you're getting everything in line, and then 10 to 100 million is when the steam steamroller just starts, right? It's like, all right, we figured out what to do. Let's just go execute it on it. Keep it simple, stupid. Just go, 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 and try to execute on that. But a part that adds into this, which I think is quite unique with regards to remote, is hiring across so many different countries, which you had just mentioned. So outside of, let's say, hiring Filipino talent, so just recently there was a horrible attack in Vancouver, Canada, where 11 Filipinos were killed by a driver at a Filipino community event. And me understanding what the cultural touch points were of the Filipino employees inside of our organization, the first thing that I did was, did you hear about this? What's going on? And because it's, a lot of the Filipino community is an expat community, so they would hear about that more than anybody else. Any other kind of like quick tips on how to adapt to different cultures? And I'll give you one other interesting story connected to this as well. We have one of our senior engineers is Ukrainian. And the first time that I started working with him on a weekly basis, I would tell him, like, in a very Canadian way, it would be nice if you could quite possibly build this particular feature in this way. And then he would say, no. And then I would say, well, why not? Like, what's going on? Because that's stupid. And I remember getting off that call and being like, what the hell just happened? I don't know what's going on here. And then I spoke to a friend of mine that was Ukrainian, and he's like, oh, that's just the way that Ukrainians talk. Next time that you jump on a call with him, and I did jump on this call, I said, hey, I thought about this from our conversation last week. It's really important that you build this particular feature. It's critical. It's like, no, it was stupid. We're not doing that. Well, you work for me, and that's what I need you to do. So I kind of jumped out of my Canadianness and jumped into a little bit more Ukrainian Russian vibe, and I ended up actually getting what I needed. And then from that point forward, we've never had a problem moving forward. How do you see those? Are there some major cultural differences that you see inside of your organizations, and how do you deal with them, with hiring from so many different countries?
Thank you. The first thing I'll say is that when you are an entrepreneur, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Are there any serial entrepreneurs in here where you have like a million different businesses and you just want to keep reinventing and creating all the things? I think that kind of personality, and even CEOs, we just want to control everything. We thought of the idea first. We're like, okay, I have the idea. This is my business. I'm going to do this. What I had to learn about 3 years in, and it did take me 3 years in, is that my employees have really good ideas. And sometimes them telling me something doesn't work isn't bad, because maybe it just doesn't work right now, or maybe I just need to hear them out. So in your situation where you're dealing with a culture that's very strong, first, you really do need to understand cultural intelligence, and you've got to understand that you talking a certain way to a certain culture doesn't make you a bad person for being assertive. It makes you actually able to listen effectively and communicate effectively, but then also asking more questions. So, well, why don't you agree with that? Or talk to me more about that. Or finding out what inefficiencies you have and what their suggestions are. Because back to when I was saying how Time Doctor helped us learn that we needed to be more efficient, and we were able to improve our efficiencies. That happened because one of my team members was like, Sarah Beth, this isn't working. Like, we are overloaded, overworked. We need to figure this out. And I actually didn't even know where to go. Like, I didn't know how we could make it more efficient because my head was stuck in what's going on in an actual office space. So my tips for that would be, one, learn to be a great leader that asks really good questions. If you've ever read the book, you know what I'm talking about. But you have to be bold enough to ask the questions, and you also have to be bold enough to know that you're probably not right all the time, most likely not right all the time, even though you have the great ideas. Like, it takes investigation, it takes patience, it takes a willingness to see things from a different vantage point.
Yeah, great tips there. I think for us, it starts with like onboarding and kind of trying to, as you said, like asking questions, but we try to, it takes a lot of time, especially in a fully remote organization with multiple time zones and all that stuff. And what we have done is that we have all these we use Slack to communicate. We have all these Slack workflows. So if the support team or sales team have feedback or report a bug, there's always a way to kind of put information in, and that gets kind of sorted. So a lot of times we get the product team's, hey, here's the roadmap for the year or whatever was happening, and the support or the sales team like, hey, like what happened to all my feedback? Well, let's create a question. Here's what happened. You said 3 times you wanted this. It was the loudest thing on that day for you, but 700 other customers said they wanted this. And so naturally, generally, we go with the 700, right? So it's just an easy way to measure these things. And so we have all these things so everyone feels heard, and they have a good reason why we didn't choose their idea. Oh, and when we chose their idea, we do the opposite. It's like, hey, Trevor, great job. You brought this to the table, and like 700 other people have this problem. We're definitely going to solve it. So it's kind of like giving an input, but in an automated fashion so that we don't have to like nurture the response every single time, because it just it becomes a drag at that point, especially in different time zones, because you wake up and you're like, I have 15 Slack messages with great ideas, and I have no clue. So anyways, that's kind of what we do.
I love nice Canadians, by the way. Particularly,
them, by the way.
like nice Canadian customers are the best to have, right? They're
Oh,
like
really?
sort of like not really yelling at you, even though that you know that they are. But there's actually a great book called The Culture Map that we actually.
I was just
going to
mention that by Aaron Meyer. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that because that book kind of goes through the origin of different languages, right? In some languages, are positive, negative, positive, right? Hey, you did this really well, but over here, maybe you should go work on it, but you did this really well, right? The U.S. is kind of in that category. But then other languages are the other way, where it's negative, positive, negative, right? And when you get managers that don't understand the way that those cultures actually talk, ends up, being a huge disconnect, just like you were having, right?
Right.
So one of the things that we do with our managers, one, we have them read that book, but two, ironically, we actually use ChatGPT a lot. Where for the cultures that are maybe a little bit more on the abrasive side, since a lot of times, particularly if they haven't met a lot of the other team members and they haven't established that underlying trust, you got to like coach them. You're like, hey, dude, just before you actually post that Slack message, like put it in ChatGPT, have it actually change the tonality of it, and then over time you can kind of then be a little bit more direct.
You have an asshole filter.
100%. It actually works great.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, like we've got, we actually have more people in the country of Georgia than the state of Georgia. So like,
Wow.
Georgia's kind of that same deal, right? We're super direct. And honest to God, like they all filter it through, and you can always read it and know when it's coming through. But you're like, that's okay. That's actually better than you actually pissing off these 10,000 other people over here.
Next question I want to run on to here is raising capital for remote companies, right? I don't know. I know that you've done a lot of raising, but Sujan, you're completely bootstrapped, right? And Sarah, I don't know if you are.
Yeah, I'm completely, yeah.
Okay, so this question is more for Andy. I mean, so when pre-COVID, raising money remotely was horrible, at least from my perspective. So we actually, in 2012, I got my little jacket on and I went down to San Francisco, and we had a couple $1 million in ARR, and I went down and talked to a whole bunch of VCs, and it was a horrible experience because we got a couple term sheets. We got 3, and all 3 of them said you must move to San Francisco, Toronto, or Montreal, which is where we got the 3 term sheets from. Everyone, all employees have got to move to that particular location. And I said, well, but our mission is to empower the world's transition towards remote work. And they said, we love that. But like, we're VCs, just trust us. You need to actually just get everyone in one location to be able to run a serious remote company. And thankfully, that's fundamentally changed post 2020. Andy, what are you seeing in that kind of new age of raising money?
Yeah, Liam, great question. Yeah, 100% right. We raised our first capital, I guess, 11 years ago. And when you go to investors 11 years ago, the pre-COVID remote, the whole 9 yards, they're like, oh, cute, remote. What a great perk. How many days of the week do you actually allow people to do remote? You're like, no. Like, we shut down the offices, and then we, like, basically hire people from all over. They're like, cute. Okay, now where's going to be your headquarters, right? So, like, the whole concept was 100% foreign, right? And obviously, fast forward, it's so different now. But when you actually then go to them, and the way that they actually ended up coming around is you actually look at the P&L. You're like, hey, not only is there massive impact on the actual P&L and going remote, but you're also now no longer dependent on who the great people are just happen to being around that zip code, right? And you start actually opening up people's eyes and investors' eyes on the notion that, hey, this is an asset if you can make it truly part of the operating system in which you run the companies. Again, if it's just, you just shut down the office and everyone is in and around the greater Austin area here, you're like, okay, that doesn't really matter. But then if you really can convince them that and actually literally show them the results, it does make a massive impact on the P&L. And then all of a sudden, it matters, right? And now, like, when we go in and raise capital, like, it is never even a discussion, right? They're like, great, what is the results? How do you actually ensure that your playbooks are in place to be able to go and drive the results, growth, and EBITDA? And they're like, there's an office? Like, it's literally not even a discussion.
Well, that's fantastic. Has anyone raised money in the audience right now? A couple people. Fantastic. Yeah, I think that it's going to be so much easier. And pre-COVID, especially in the running remote community, I felt like a lot of founders had a chip on their shoulders because they went to try and raise money. And it's like, well, all of our metrics are better than 95% of the companies that you're seeing. And yet you don't want to invest in me just because we're remote. So it's exciting that that's shifted.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it's actually going to go back the other way, though. Right? Because
Do tell us about that.
Yeah, because if you think about, the whole remote momentum was building pre-COVID, right? And people were actually thinking about it intelligently and actually thinking about workflows and asynchronous work and how you actually make decisions remotely. And then the advanced class of remote came immediately with COVID, and that shoved everyone out, right? So many organizations, particularly the bigger companies, weren't prepared for that. And I know that Time Doctor did well in that time period, as did a few of my companies that were remote specific. But they never really adjusted to remote hiring. They never really adjusted to be able to make decisions remote. They never really, really transitioned to asynchronous. And as a result of that, basically all of them now are saying, nope, you have to come back to the office. Obviously you saw JP Morgan and everyone else basically saying, you got to come back. Even like the big guys, right? The Facebooks and the Googles of the world, who you think that would totally figure it out. They're like, no. Like, we have office space. You have to come back. So I think that's going to happen then is that's going to then taint remote fundamentally, because all of these great companies, they couldn't make it happen. Who the hell are you to be able to say that you can make it happen? So then therefore LP capital will then look at the masses and be like, you're going to have to really demonstrate that your operating system on remote is somehow better. So I actually think it's going to close up a little bit. Maybe not like it was 11 years ago when people didn't understand, but now they actually do understand the pitfalls of the productivity elements of it, and therefore you're going to have to actually explain it a bit more.
I want to be able to get feedback on other people as well with regards to that. Have you seen, we're all running remote companies, but do you see, how do you react to the return to office backlash that's currently happening right now? Do you just not care at all? Do you think it's a net advantage for the two of you in terms of talent, as an example?
Oh, for me, it's great because I can hire better people. I can
Right.
hire everyone there is at risk of leaving or being recruited out. So it's just great opportunity to recruit, and also some good learnings. I think, especially like a large company, I think we were lucky enough to be remote from the beginning, and so we didn't face a lot of the same issues that folks did when they turned remote, because we just had to train our people to learn how to work remotely from the beginning.
Right.
And then we didn't have many. I guess our team and those folks that work for us now and that we've hired over the years, they also had, our requirement was they had to work remote 1 or 2 years prior. So they know how to work when their 2-year-old comes in the room, in the office and wherever, or maybe they have an office or a place to work. So, but I think the lesson I take away from all these companies that failed to kind of get people to stay remote is they didn't really try that hard to onboard and retrain and do all the work that is required to have an effective workplace.
Yeah, I love that you just said that, because part of my philosophy is actually not that I hire anybody with experience, and I'm sure that I'm going to get a few responses of wait, are you joking? You hire people with no experience? Yeah, I hire people with 0 experience, and part of my process is that you have to know someone that works for my company if you want to apply and you want an interview. Everybody else goes through our filtering process to see if their talent might work with us. But my first priority is someone that knows someone, because I feel like they have a different level of accountability. And so then we put them through 9 months of training before move, and I totally invest in 9 months of training before they ever see one of my clients. So I want to know that they are fully immersed. Their first 3 months is just them working by themselves. Their second 3 months is after testing and shadowing. Their third 3 months is that someone is shadowing them. And then in their fourth 3 months, I'm saying that weird, but that's when they actually are working by themselves on a client of mine. And I'm literally investing all of that because for me, that works the best. Like I have people that are in training right now that I'm already forecasting for the expansion of my office and my company and what we're expected for our growth to look like. So a whole crew of people just literally in training at all times. And I could hire someone and have them up and running in 2 weeks, absolutely. But my retention rate for my employees is at 98%. So what I'm doing is working, and it is mattering to my clients because I don't want high turnover. My clients are divas. Like, I work in the dental industry, and I'm sure there are many very much so diva clients, but I have dental offices that very much so believe that in-office work is the only thing that matters. They're old school. They've been dentists since 80s, 90s, early 2000s. I mean, literally that long. And some of them still have paper charts. They aren't even digital practices. So hearing a virtual team member, they think of hackers. You know, it's not like they're actually thinking logically about how this could be safe, how this could be better, how efficiencies could be totally different for their practices. You know, they're paying someone $100,000 a year who's not collecting money in the same month they produce it, and they come to us and grow their business by 20% in their first 3 months. So, I mean, it's a total game changer, and it's learning to onboard your people properly, having a process that actually works so you don't have that high turnover.
So let me just roll back for a second, because I had a question about coaching senior leadership and basically just coaching management in general. You train people for 9 months before they work, before they actually like produce. How do you do that? I don't. That would be. I mean, if I could afford that, that would be amazing.
It's my second company. Well,
Okay.
It's one of my other companies.
All right.
And so I have Dentistry Support, and I have
Yep.
Dentistry Support Academy.
Okay.
We have a fully virtual online training system that isn't dependent on humans to train them. They actually go through our entire training process through a virtual academy. So it's all virtual. It's like set it and forget it. So my investment is their payroll, of course.
Yeah.
But the payoff is so tremendous for me because I know that they're going to stay. They're loyal to me. And a lot of the cultures that I hire in, education is very important to them.
Right.
So I'm appealing to their culture by letting them know they're now going to have an education that they'll complete by the time they actually start working, and their pay incentive is fabulous. I hire them at a low pay, and I don't care what their experience is. The pay is tremendously low, but by the time they finish that, the pay is such a huge incentive to them that they stay with me, and it works.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing.
It's not that you can't afford it. You just got to look at it different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got to talk afterwards. I mean,
Okay, let's go.
That's amazing. For Sujan and Andy, I'd love to also talk about coaching for remote native management. How do you really see differences for managing for remote managers versus in-person managers? Or is there any difference that you see?
I think it comes down, for us, it's been around the communication and making sure the communication style of the manager is aligned with what we want to do. So we run on like EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. That's kind of a book similar to like Scaling Up. But essentially there's scorecard structure and all these things. I don't know that running remote for a manager for us is much different, because a lot of times like the prerequisite for a senior person is you've had to have managed a remote team. So I'm pretty sure someone else has figured it out for us before we.
So you're just hiring senior talent, essentially saying, hey, you know what? If you haven't had 5 years of managing remote teams, as an example, we're not even interested.
Exactly.
But so you're not grabbing those junior people and developing them.
So for our management team, we overpay and we actually stick to the U.S.
Okay.
I want. And this is going to sound like an asshole, but I've already started with that. I've admitted this.
I really think you need to get Andy's new tool that he's going to sell to you. The asshole,
I want the inversion
LLM tool.
of that. All the nice thoughts. I just want to sound like an asshole. Keep double down. Anyways, so my point was that we hire people who had that experience, And I want all the folks that are one flight away from me, because we do a lot of, I am a person, this is my personality. I want to just meet somebody face to face. I want to have a phone call, and I want to be able to text them and call them whenever the hell I want to. And I'm nice, and I will schedule the text message. And I won't call them at midnight when I have an idea. I'll schedule that Slack message. But I want those folks to have I think it's more of the personality, and it might not be only America, but like North America, because what they're exposed to, the work experience that they're exposed to at let's call it a rapid or high growth startup, you just don't get in a lot of other countries.
Right.
And so if like for my head of engineering, if I hired that person we have a lot of we have we have an engineering office in Turkey and Pakistan.
Mm-hmm.
There's just not enough talent there, in my opinion, to do the things we want to do with that person, or it'd be harder to find.
Right.
So, yeah.
Andy, anything with regards to coaching senior leaders for remote?
Yeah, hiring and coaching C-level folks is hard, period, right? Whether you're talking about, in person or remote, finding the right person for the company is something that, it really does take time. And I have to say, we were doing it dead wrong for a bunch of years, right? So our hiring pipeline...
What were you doing wrong?
Well, so our hiring pipelines, basically for every role is that, we blanket across 50 different countries. We've got, somewhat of an automated testing system that people then go through, everything from cognitive tests to skills tests to everything else in there. And then we interview them for cultural fit. So we're like, we'll have, anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 applicants per role. So we're like, great, let's just go do the same thing for VPs and C-levels and what have you. And you're like, oh, wow, you get even more applicants. Look at that. That's awesome. And then you'd hire them, and then they're the wrong fit, right? Because, again, what you're looking for in a C-level, it's really hard to go and do that. So it's actually my business coach, a guy by the name of Jim Hewling. He wrote a book called 4 Disciplines of Execution. He's like, hey, Andy, think about the business impact that this one person makes. Right? You guys have all heard Steve Jobs' bozo explosion, right? Where A players hire A players and A+ players, but B players hire C players hire D players. And then you have a whole division of what Steve called this bozo explosion that you'd have to then fire the entire division, right? So he's like, this hire literally drives the other senior managers and drives the entire culture and everyone else in that organization. Don't you think you should spend more time than a bunch of automated tests on these guys? You're totally right. So literally, we've completely inverted it. So now for every single C-level hire, we actually spend almost a full week with them. We actually bring in the final candidates. We actually bring them here to Austin. We actually meet them. We'll pay for their flights and the whole 9 yards. And just to really, really get to know these people, because we've already tested for, the cognitive side. We've tested for the ability. Now the question is simply can they really do the job that you need to do? And it's worth a week of your time if you're really going to be depending on, millions of dollars in this person's hands, and inversely costing you millions of dollars if that's the wrong hire, right? And
right.
it's so painful to have a wrong C-level hire that you literally, we kind of went a little bit old school, right? And just being able to then bring them in, and then even after that, we have a regular rotation of bringing them in, surrounding them with leadership trainings, and then of course we have all of the typical remote trainings that we do, but it's really a way more hands-on than we ever had been.
Yeah, that's great. I'm going to stick with you actually because I've got another one specifically for you. What's your due diligence litmus test to judge whether an on-site team can actually work remotely? Because you're buying up these in-office companies and then basically flipping over to remote. It's a really simple thesis, and you've done it incredibly well. But is there a litmus test? Is there a methodology that you follow?
Yeah, most of the companies we buy get caught in what I call the second chasm, right? So if you think of Jeffrey Moore's great book, Crossing the Chasm, a lot of that is the first product market fit and kind of getting to the early majority. But when a lot of these companies are around for 10 or 20 years, they kind of plateau at the top. And if you look at that as a standard distribution curve, so there's a flat area at the top, right? So a lot of times we will buy companies in that space. And when you look at why they actually get stuck, it actually often is they don't have access to capital. They don't really know how to acquire other companies. And then they don't have the talent in and around their area or the culture to be able to then go and take it to the next level, right? So literally, we are looking for companies with that flaw, if you want to think of it like that, that we see already exists, in that you've seen it in their growth rate. And then from that, we then buy other companies, merge it in, bring in the remote capital, bring in the remote talent to be able to then go make the company better. So literally, that is part of our diligence process, is that you're like, great, are these current founders, do they not have the ability to actually kind of take it to the next level? Is it a market dynamic, or is it really a team dynamic? And more times than not, it's actually a team dynamic.
Very interesting. Next one I've got, I'll give it to Sujan just because he's next. I really see, so Mailshake is a company that I've actually kind of been seeing through social media. I don't know when you started it, almost 10 years ago, I feel.
Yeah, 10 years ago.
I remember you posted something on Facebook, which was, hey, do you want to try out this new app for like $1? And I was like, all right, I'll try it for $1. And I remember using it for maybe about 6 months, and I was like, $1, this is great, right? And then I stopped using it, and then our VP of sales, maybe about 5 or 6 years later, was like, oh, we have to get Mailshake. I was like, like Sujan's company? What do you mean? Yeah, like Mailshake is like the app when it comes to outreach. And I was like, wow, that's amazing to kind of just see the evolution. But you fundamentally, I kind of see you guys as a very creative organization. And you talked a little bit about essentially kind of creating those serendipitous ideas, like being able to call everybody and just get everyone on the phone very quickly. Is there anything else that you do in terms of just trying to kind of work on new product ideas? I know that you're working on a couple of those now. Is there any methodology that you do with the remote lens?
Yeah, me personally, and my head of product, our job is to do nothing. And I have no role at the company outside of the direction of our product.
Okay.
And some marketing ideas and whatnot. That extra time, and what I mean is I delegated every single thing I can delegate. And I'm always like, I have I have maybe 2 hours of meetings a week. And I hate meetings.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Again, I'm an asshole. I don't want to talk to people. But in that extra time and brain
He's
power,
really not, by the way. He's very, very nice.
I accidentally created some persona here. But my point is I have a lot of time, and what I've been doing is just talking to customers, talking to our customers, our sales reps, head of sales, like everyone doing outreach. Sometimes it's marketing folks or recruiters, and I'm just trying to understand what the hell they're doing. What's their workflow? What's going on? And I'll find a little inkling of an idea, and I'll dig in. So here's an example. Over the last 2 months or so, I've been doing these webinars. So the crux of our product, the most challenging piece is the actual email copy. And it turns out most people are bad at that. I've been saying the same thing, all these talks at sales conferences and whatnot, almost the same thing for 10 years. Like the copy is like, it's now some more buzzwords and whatever, but it's like, write a short email, please, right? Like less words, less jargon, all that stuff. So the same, most basic stuff. But anyways, over the last few months, I've just done these webinars where I welcome on anyone in our email list and our customer base. It's like, hey, hop on a webinar. I'll just rewrite your emails for you. And I got kind of tired of doing it on the fly and talking and doing everything.
Right.
So I started using AI to do it. And I was like, how do I shortcut this? And, today we launched a tool that does all that. And it's just like, we just did the whole process manually. After a couple hundred email rewriting, we figured out, okay, this is the best model, which is Claude. And then actually, here's the prompt. And actually, you need 6 prompts, and then we can just do that.
Okay.
So, but it's just doing those things, and then say with my product. And then I talked earlier about getting feedback from everywhere. We source our kind of where we dig in from those types of things. And I'm just looking for people who have frustrating issues and then that are not also with our product. I want to know what the hell is annoying about sales that's not Mailshake. I want to know, is it whatever else? And maybe that's a product we can build, or maybe that's something we can coach on or whatever. So that's just what I do.
Wow. That's fantastic. Yeah, I love the focus on product. I think when you're thinking about a SaaS business, that's fundamentally what you're supposed to do. And when we get into scale mode, we kind of think, we got to do operations, we got to figure out all these different things. But at the end of the day, you as the founder, I really think that that's where your focus should be, because you understand your customer hopefully more than anybody else. and you should be as close to product as humanly possible.
Yeah, and also we tried investing in sales and marketing, and actually releasing more product brought more sales and did more in our marketing than our marketing did. So
Wow.
we're like, screw that, let's just go build more product.
Yeah. That makes sense. Next question I have is for Sarah, and after that, I think we're going to get into a couple questions. If anyone has questions, queue them up. I'll jump in about 5 minutes. But Sarah, there's another big part of scaling that I think is really important. We talked about it backstage, is compliance, right? So particularly in the dental industry, you have something called HIPAA, which is, I don't know what it stands for, but it basically means it's medical documentation. That's your own private property. And if any of that ends up falling outside of the organization, you're in deep shit, right?
Time.
So how do you deal with that in a remote organization?
Well, the most important thing is to partner with companies that specialize in that, because I don't specialize in that. So I have to be with companies that understand that aspect. So for example, like my team has to be screen recorded and monitored at all times. Whenever they're logged in, that has to happen. That happens through the Time Doctor app. I have to have special ways that they log in remotely to my clients. I have to have all of these different things that create a compliant experience, and I have to be able to prove that that exists. And so I would encourage you all to just first do the research to make sure you know what compliance measures you have. Typically, we onboard a client, and the very first thing they're doing that's totally wrong is emailing about anything with a patient. So that's like the first thing we get rid of, right? We only communicate with our clients through a HIPAA compliant chat system. That's it. Like, number one, get out of email. I mean, everybody that is still in, I don't know why we're still in email if we're still in email. I mean, there's so many other resources and ways you can connect instantaneously. The other thing is like, I love how you talked about the way that you're not really like in the business, like how most CEOs are when it comes to scaling. Like we created 3 years ago an ethics line. So like our clients, they have direct access to their team 24/7. Like they don't have to go through some imaginary help desk to get in touch with us. If they have something that has to deal with a patient and they need to talk to us, they're doing that through our HIPAA compliant chat. We have no ability for our team to download anything, screenshot anything. When that happens, we immediately get a notification to our senior management, and their screen goes black. They can't even do anything.
Okay.
Like nothing to get in. So we know when things are happening, and we're constantly monitoring that activity. It's not about, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to race to prevent HIPAA breaches. It's partnering with the right people to make it happen, because you are really good at what you do. Stay in your lane. Quit trying to reinvent the wheel and make it super great by, oh my gosh, let me reinvent this, let me reinvent this. There's people out there that will partner with you and help protect your business.
Right. I think when you think about security certification, it's one of those things that sounds really boring to everybody, but it is so absolutely critical. And what's currently happening right now, back to Andy's point with regards to kind of this emergency remote work that happened in 2020, is everyone threw security compliance out the window. I don't know if you guys, so I was calling my banker like April of 2020 and saying, hey, I need you to move some money around. Okay, well, I'll go into the office on Tuesday. And, it was like Thursday or something like that. I'm going to go in the office on Tuesday to be able to move the money. What do you mean? Can you not? Let's move the money. Like, I can move the money online. He said, well, I can only go in the office on Tuesday. I can't really do it from my computer. And then literally like a month later, I remember my banker's like, yeah, they just let us move it. And it's like, are you compliant in it? Like, and that's, by the way, PCI compliance. And they really weren't. So there's banker level security that you need for a lot of these things. And we have still not found, and I've been doing a lot of research on this, there is not an out of the box, just easy solution for HIPAA, SOC 2, or PCI compliance. And it is if you're thinking about building that type of product to hit the enterprise space, it is a multi-trillion-dollar space, particularly for remote and hybrid organizations, because most people are non-compliant fundamentally. I know that you are not, or sorry, that you are, but it's one of those things that when I look at this, I'm thinking, this is a ticking time bomb. It's, a couple precedents away from, oh my God, we can't actually work remotely legally, right? Outside of Trump basically signing that mandate saying everyone has to go back to the office. One last question before we jump into Q&A. What's the biggest myth about what I'll call remote culture dilution inside of remote organizations. So as companies scale, there is this phenomenon that's been passed around essentially the last kind of year or two, which is remote culture dilution, which is, okay, we got to bring everyone back into the office because the culture is inside of the office. And that is the critical component of this. And as you go remote and you scale, that culture continues to dilute and dilute and dilute. And I think that there's some best practices, but I'd love to hear what you guys think about remote cultural dilution. Does it exist in your organization, and is there anything that you're doing to combat it?
So we've been remote since the very beginning. I mean, at inception. And I remember talking about creating my company in 2014. And I would say words like, I swear, the wave of the world is going remote. I have to create this right now. Like, if I don't, somebody else is going to do it, you know? And then there was a company that was created that was just like mine, but much bigger. And so then there was just two of us. And then COVID happened, you know? And then there was like, everybody was creating a virtual dental company. And then I would talk to more and more practices, and it was like everybody who had ever once worked in a dental practice was saying, I can now work remote, you know? And I think the reason there has been this movement of like bring everything back in office is because people are scared of what they don't understand. And they didn't take the time to understand how your efficiencies can improve, how your business can be monumentally more profitable. I mean, for example, my largest company I have, before we implemented really tracking the efficiencies of our team, our profit margin was about 30%, which was great given the situation of what we did and how we did it. Changing our efficiencies and not treating my employees like in-office team members and really bifurcating their job duties made us 70% profitable. So our profit margin, literally every $100 we make, $70 of that is profit for our company.
Wow.
I mean, if you just think about just that for a second, that transforms everything you could possibly think about in office. I mean, my husband, when I first started my company, he said, Sarah Beth, are you going to get like a high rise because you're so profitable? You're doing so good. I'm so proud of you. No, never. I'll never get a high. I'll never pay rent somewhere. Absolutely not. What's your business address? A P.O. box. Like, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to have an in-office team. I'll never go there because I have literally 300 people who answer phones virtually for offices all over the U.S. It's a virtual call center. It works fabulous. I need nothing. I can put that money into other things to grow my infrastructure, build my training platform. I mean, I'm hiring all these employees in advance. Instead of me playing for a brick and mortar, I can invest in my company.
Yeah, no, great answer. Sujan, cultural dilution. Do you see it, or do you think that that's a thing inside of your company, or is it something that isn't even an issue?
I used to work for a tech company in the early 2000s. We had Red Bulls, and they'd buy us dinner if we worked late. And I think they were spending $100,000 a year on Starbucks canned Frappuccinos, the ones that you buy at the grocery store. Ridiculous. We only learned that during the 2008, 2009 recession, where we stopped getting them, and there was like a revolt.
Right.
We want our Frappuccinos. And somebody was like, well, that's one whole person that could not get fired. And like, oh, shit, okay, maybe we're okay with it. Anyways, long story short, the culture wasn't Frappuccinos, Red Bull, and dinners. It was a team that stayed late and didn't have to go fucking get Red Bulls from the liquor store down the street. And, you know, and it was just efficiency. And because of that, the team just kind of hung out more. And when the results of the hanging out were like these ideas, and like one, it was just working longer hours. It was just pure arbitrage on time, right?
Yep.
Don't pay your employee to go get Starbucks or whatever. Give it to them.
Right.
But the point is, the culture is really what people do and what people say, and the facade is like you have to do it in person. And actually, turns out you can have people talk to each other and know each other anywhere, right? So we have mirrored some of these like in-person things. So we have this like cafe channel on Slack, and it's just like we just encourage by doing and sharing ourselves. It's like, what are you up to? What's a holiday you're celebrating? Because I mean, almost every day there's a freaking holiday somewhere in the world. And I'm like, I don't know what it is, but that's cool. What do you do on this day? Or like, turns out like some parts of the world celebrate what we know as Christmas in January. And, you know, obviously there's different religions and stuff like that. But like, so anyways, my point is we've just kind of mirrored some of these in-person things on Slack. Okay. And we have game night, but it's during coffee time in the morning.
Okay.
Actually lunch or whatever. So we try to do some of these things.
Okay.
And the how, not necessarily the catalyst of the Red Bull.
Right. Andy, I'd love to hear your perspective, particularly with so many different companies under the portfolio. Do you see, because you probably have a really good data set to be able to take a look at, is there cultural dilution that's happening? And if so, how do you combat it?
Yeah, I think there's a pre-COVID answer and a post-COVID answer.
Yep, that's a good one.
Right? Because pre-COVID, people are like, oh my God, our office is the center of our universe. All the developers are there, all the executives are there. You can't get promoted unless you like live in and around the office, right? And then you had a couple of maybe remote nodes, but those guys were just out on their own. Like, it's really about the office culture. So whenever we bought those companies, they were like, oh my God, you can't shut down. What are you talking about? You can't shut down the office. And you can, obviously. Post-COVID, it was actually really kind of interesting where you don't actually hear that anymore, because even if you do have an office, most of these offices are ghost towns, right? I mean, even you go into all of these buildings here in Austin, right? You're like 50% occupancy or whatever. So the allure of the in-office culture has largely died organically, you know, as people kind of tried the whole hybrid side of the world. So it's
Right.
interesting that we don't get that as much anymore, but definitely pre-COVID, like that was a really big deal, right? And it took a long time to convince senior management and all the others that you can actually have other assets when you do have people from all around the world that actually enhances your culture, as opposed to, you know, just happens to be in there and with a kegerator or whatever it may be, right? And I do agree with you that the culture isn't, you know, all of that, the perks, right? But it takes a long time to realize that, oh my God, the culture of the company changes if I can get better and better people. And all of a sudden it's magical, because now you do have all these committed, really smart people solving tough problems together, and that enhances the culture. So I think in many ways, post-COVID, you know, and what happened to the actual office culture has been actually dramatically positive to the remote world.
Yeah, for sure. Questions for anybody else? We're getting kind of to the end of the hour here. Does anyone else have questions that they would like to ask? Okay.
Hi, Brian. I'm also from Austin, and this question's for Andy, sort of parlaying off what you would say. So we're going to role play a little bit. So I'm an entrepreneur, have a founding company. I'm a founder. I'm very proud of my culture. You come in and give me an LOI, and I ask you this question: is my culture going to change? How do you answer that?
Absolutely.
And how?
Right? Where, you know, the culture of your particular company is based on your particular size and characteristics where
Right.
it is today. It is fundamentally, all cultures change as you double in size, triple in size, right? So absolutely, if your goal is to maintain whatever ARR culture you are today, then we're not the right fit for you. But if you're interested in scaling up from here and surrounding that in all the other ways that actually enhance the culture from that sense, then we're the right fit for you. So, I mean, that'd be a very direct answer. I probably wouldn't answer it quite like that, but that's the way that I would role play.
Right. And how will it change? What have you seen in your experience when you've done this with other companies?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big problems that you probably have today is acquiring talent, maintaining talent, the whole 9 yards, right? So that's the biggest change, where, you know, literally we've got hiring pipelines that within days now you can go and fill those recs, as opposed to, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks, and perhaps working with headhunters and recruiters in the whole 9 yards. And then it's just magical when you have, you know, a huge plethora of people to choose from, and then what that actually then does to the quality of talent on your team. So the culture will change, but it's an upgrade because you have just these amazing people from around the world contributing to it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hello. So I've been slowly growing our team, and going from 4 or 5 to 10 was doable. And the last year or so, we've gone from 10 to 20, and I feel like I'm very much like barely treading water, and I feel like I had no kind of heads up with that. So is there, and someone validated that in the Running Remote community. They made me feel much better with, specifically with offsite planning. Do you guys have some other inflection points? Okay, 20 employees, 50 employees, 100, where just like a little heads up for me that like shit's gonna get crazy again? Or will it ever chill out?
50. I've always found like 10, 20, 50, 100. Where like 100, I don't know everyone's name. 50, I start to like, who's that person? I know them. You know, like, what do they do again? At 20, I know everybody. It feels like a family, but it's not, right? And at 10 or whatever, it's like I know them all intimately, and they know something embarrassing about me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think if I'm 20, it's really about building that. In my opinion, the foundations, some of the infrastructure or the processes, so that you can scale to 50, and more so, I found at that point was really getting my managers trained up. Like, I know how to work with them, but do they know how to work with their people that they're going to hire soon on whatever? And are they the right person for the job?
Well, I want to give you some encouragement. You're doing great. Hang in there. Something that happened for me, I grew to 50 employees in the first 6 weeks. We became $1 million brand in 6 weeks of starting my business, and 6 weeks in, that's where I was at. It was wild, and it was really due to the connections I had in the dental community. And I'm totally going to say that because it wasn't anything, I didn't have to hustle hard for that. I did work 22 hours a day, but it was tapping into my network. The biggest shift for me happened when I went from 50 to 75 employees, and I realized my SOPs were trash. Absolute trash. And that's why it was so hard for me. And then once I got back to actually making sure that those were updated more than once a year, because that was our philosophy. It was every October we're checking our handbook. What does it look like? And then I was like, why am I what? Like, if there's a change, handbook, update now, right now. That something's not working, we have to do it. So I love how you said your foundation, because it really is everything into that. And I totally understand where you're at, and I've absolutely been there, and I get it. Go back to your SOPs. Make sure everything is totally duplicatable. Like, I don't have to be in my company at all right now. My shift is totally different. I live in our ethics chat. When there is a bad thing that happens or somebody's upset, an ethics ticket comes in, and I live in there trying to refine, revamp, make our company better. Like, that's where my life is. It's not, and I trust and know that every team member is getting trained exactly the same way, no matter how big we scale to. Does that make sense? Okay.
That's great. One other thing I would mention, Google the Dunbar number. So Dunbar is the most difficult transition that we've had personally, is once you get past 100 to 150 employees, no matter how hard you try, they stop being personal connections. And your tribe is usually 100 to 150 people. So fundamentally, they have to turn into a number. And you, as a founder, unfortunately need to adapt your perspective to say, okay, well, people are now going to be a number because I can't know everybody, to Sujan's point there. I think that's it. So thank you so much. Thank you, Andy, Sarah, and Sujan. And I'm sure they're going to be available for questions if anyone is interested in chatting with them afterwards. Thank you.